Wednesday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you guys are doing well out there, although I doubt you are in a great mood if you stayed up to watch the end of that Twins game. We'll get to that in just a minute. Twins lose 7-5 to the Padres. Lost a couple of different leads. They were up 3-1. They were up 5-3. They lose 7-5. Not a great game for the bullpen. Not a great game for the base running. Not a great night in general when you factor in everything that took place in the AL Central race. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. Some Vikings stuff here in a minute as well. Day 2 of the Brian Flores Tua Tagovailoa story, although I think if it's not a happy ending, it is a mature ending with some of what Flores said on Tuesday. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. Kent Youngblood from the Star Tribune joins me here in a few minutes to talk Lynx. Big week for the Lynx. They play Las Vegas twice, including tonight in Vegas. And then Saturday, Caitlin Clark and Indiana come to town on the same night that Maya Moore has her jersey retired. One of Caitlin Clark's favorite players, basketball heroes growing up. That should be quite a event, quite a spectacle, and also quite an important game for the Lynx and the Fever at Target Center. So big week ahead for the Lynx. Big trade they made yesterday as well. Kent and I will break all that down. Gophers football thought at the end of the show. First, though, what I missed, like I said, we are going to start with the Twins and the disappointment of Tuesday night. So they're up 3-1 after 6. Bailey Ober's been cruising, goes back out for the 7th. I like that decision. Like, a lot of the decision-making in this game is, you're always subject to second guess when something doesn't go right. Like, is it a results-based complaint, or is it a process-based complaint? I mean, there's a little bit of process in this, but Ober goes back out for the 7th. Bang, bang, single home run. Now it's 3-3. He gets pulled. Griffin Jacks comes in, pitches a clean rest of the inning, so it's 3-3 after 7. Not where they wanted to be, but Bailey Ober, another really good start, had San Diego off balance all game. The fastball was working. The changeup was working. He's been excellent. No shame in sending him back out there. Sometimes that's going to happen. A good team's going to get a hit. Like, that's not the end of the world. I think they would have been second guessing further in the other direction if you don't send him out for the 7th and the game falls apart at that point. So no problem with Rocco Baldelli and the Twins' decision to leave him in, even if it doesn't work out. Now, the 8th, things turn around, right? The Twins get a pinch hit single from Christian Vasquez, ends up scoring 2 runs. They go back up 5-3, get another guy thrown out on the bases. A lot of that last night, a lot of squandered opportunities in that regard. At that point, you're thinking, hey, maybe it won't cost them. They're up 5-3 in the 8th. They send out lefty Stephen Okert to start the 8th. It does not go well. Gives up 4 runs, ends up being a 7-5 lead for San Diego, ends up being a 7-5 win. Okert has been pretty mediocre all year, right? Like, they don't have a great left-handed pitcher this year. They don't have a great bullpen this year. I think they're like 15th, 16th in bullpen ERA right now. Bullpen ERA right around 4. Was a little bit better a few days ago before they had the Jorge Alcala game in Texas that lost that last game of the Texas series. And then they had the Stephen Okert game here where he gives up 4 runs. Not all his fault, of course. Not saying it's just either of those guys' fault, but they had a very high negative win probability added in both of those games and contributed directly to those defeats. Now, 2 points on that. One, I've been saying this for about a week or two since Joe Ryan was hurt. Twins have to win the Pablo Lopez and Bailey Ober starts. Sunday was the Pablo Lopez start, gave up no runs in 6 innings, but then there's a bullpen meltdown. Tuesday was the Bailey Ober start, goes 6 innings, 3 runs. By the time the bullpen takes over, it's a tie game, but they do reclaim the lead. He pitches well. They end up losing because the bullpen can't hold that lead. You've got to have those games. Otherwise, you're going to put too much pressure on Zebby Matthews, David Festa, Simeon Woods Richardson. There's a lot of pressure on those guys now. Woods Richardson gets the ball tonight as the Twins try to stave off a sweep at the hands of the Padres, what was once such a promising road trip, starting out 3-0 in Texas. Now 3 straight losses, 2 of them directly attributed to the bullpen. That brings me to another point here, in that the bullpens between the Twins and Cleveland, that could end up being the difference. That could end up being the story. It's not that the Twins bullpen is terrible. It's just average, right? Like I said, it's average, right around league average in ERA, right in the middle of the pack in terms of ERA. Cleveland's bullpen is far and away the best in the majors. ERA of 2.65. That's like a half a run better than anybody else in baseball. 1.3 runs better than the Twins' bullpen ERA. They are far and away the best team in baseball with the bullpen. And Tuesday night was a great example of that. They play the Yankees. They get, they get into a bullpen game with the Yankees, ostensibly get shutout innings in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. That is hard to do, especially when you get that free runner in the 10th and 11th. Cleveland ends up winning 9-5 in extra innings, 12 innings. I believe it was the longest game in the majors this year, a little over 4 hours. They pull it out. Yankees had the winning run on third base with less than 2 outs in extra innings, could not push it across, and it was right around the time that the Twins were blowing their lead in San Diego. That could have been down to a game and a half if the Twins win and Cleveland loses. Instead, Twins fall apart in the bullpen. Cleveland's bullpen gets the job done. They get out of that inning, end up winning the game. Cleveland now up 3.5 on the Twins. And the Twins, by the way, now tied with the Royals at 3.5 back of Cleveland. So you don't just have Cleveland to contend with, the Royals staying right there as well, playing good baseball. So we'll see what they're able to get done. And again, I don't think it was so much a matter of decision-making. Rocco Baldelli did address it after the game. Let's listen to that really quick.
Caleb, we brought in the game yesterday. Oak's fresh and ready to pitch. He's had a few days off. We knew that they may pinch hit Solano and send him up there. And then they have, left switch left coming up after that, and you anticipate facing all of those guys. Really, Steven got ahead of Solano very quickly. A lot of the times when we have to force teams to make moves, we like to pinch hit, but we don't necessarily mind forcing other teams to pinch hit. And he got ahead. But I think the pitch that was hit was just an execution, thing where, we're definitely not trying to go fastball down the middle there with 2 strikes. So obviously we're trying to get that pitch in a different spot. We don't get it there, and they lead off with a hit. But you'll take your chances sending Oak out there to face some lefties. It happened very quickly. They put those runs on the board really before anything else could play out.
Listening to that one more time, I believe it boils down to this. The situation called for a lefty. They just don't have a great lefty for the situation, and that is a problem that they have faced all season long. It was Brian Flores' regular turn to talk on Tuesday, Vikings defensive coordinator. On Monday, heard from Tua Tagovailoa on a podcast saying disagreed with the way he was coached by Flores, has a much better relationship with Mike McDaniel. In McDaniel's 2 years as head coach with the Dolphins, Flores was his predecessor as head coach. Called Flores a terrible person. Says his coaching style was basically too harsh, made him, took away all of his confidence, stuff like that. Flores addressed it on Tuesday. He didn't have to do this. I don't think we'd be sitting here ripping him if he had just said, hey, you know what, that was in the past. I don't talk about players I don't coach anymore, and moved on with a 30-second answer. Instead, he talked for several minutes on Tuesday and really used it as an opportunity to reflect and say, you know what, I used that time to get better. Basically didn't necessarily disagree with some of the stuff Tua was saying, or at least saying, you know what, I see where he's coming from, and I've used that time to get better. Here is a little bit of Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator, former Dolphins head coach, on Tuesday.
Part of coaching is correcting I'm always going to correct. I'm always going to have a high standard. And I think, look, I've done a lot of reflecting and, on this situation and, reflecting on the situation, communication. I think there's things that I could do better, for sure. And I've grown in that way. And I've tried to apply the things that I could do better and the things that I've learned, over the last, 2-3 years. But I would say over the long haul, I've had a lot of great relationships over my 21-year career here in the league. Players, coaches, personnel, equipment, people in the kitchen. I mean, really across the board. I've had a lot of great relationships. I'm going to continue to do that. But I'm also always looking to get better and involved. No different than as a coach, whether it's schematics or personnel or evaluations. I'm always looking to get better. I'm always looking for dialogue in meetings with coaches, with players. I don't care where a good idea comes from. You guys have heard me say that. And, I'm open to getting better. And that's always always my mindset.
I like the honesty. I like the personal growth. I like that it's smart on Flores' part, too, because if he ever wants to be a head coach in this league again, he probably needs to address stuff like this instead of letting it, come up in an interview, a job interview a year from now or 6 months from now, whatever it might be. So a good tactical move, but also an honest move, it felt like. It didn't feel like he was just paying this lip service. It really seemed like this stung him, as he said, in a certain way and did make him reflect, and something he's been reflecting on for a while now since his tenure with the Dolphins ended. So, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if this is necessarily like a happy ending to his story, but I like the way this all played out. I think it was a mature way that it all played out. Kevin O'Connell talked about it a little bit on Monday. Brian Flores really kind of stepping up on Tuesday and kind of imagining this is the end of the story, at least for now, but a satisfying kind of place I think we left this at, as satisfying as it could probably be at this point. Let's talk Lynx today with Kent Youngblood from the Star Tribune. A timely recording here, Kent, not just because of the big week ahead for the Lynx, but not long before we recorded this segment, they made a pretty significant trade. Talk me through the player they got and how she fits into what they'll want to do for the rest of the year in particular.
Well, I think they acquired Myisha Hines-Allen, the 6'1", slightly undersized power forward for Washington. A pretty good player. She was second team All League 4 years ago. She was on their title team in 2019. She has started, but most recently come off the bench. She's not an outside threat, but she can score inside. She can rebound, defend. I think she'll be a rotation player. It's interesting that they acquired her with in exchange for Lydia Apupa and Sika Kone, who was acquired in the trade when they traded out of their draft position in the most recent draft. But I mean, I think it's a sign that they think they have something. We got a stretch run of 14 games, 9 of which are on the road. It's not going to be easy. They're currently third in the league. I think they probably figure that the team has played well enough that a move like this was warranted.
It essentially is the type of player too, right? That they passed on to a degree when they didn't use the number 7 pick on Angel Reese. Not an identical type of player, but someone who will help them with rebounding. Isn't necessarily a power forward who has a whole lot of, long distance shooting range, but that type of player, and that's kind of been something they've been missing somewhat this year.
Yeah, and she's a good passer, so she'll fit into the team that way. She knows how to move the ball around. She's played with outside shooters before. I think it's a good move. I think they're a deeper team than they were coming back from Washington.
And they've won 2 games, like you said, both against Washington. Ironically, they just get to see her twice and kind of see her impact up close. So they're 19-8 going into these 2 games this week, Wednesday and Friday against Vegas. One of the one of the, I'd say 5 right now, really good teams in the league. Not that there's only 5 teams that can beat you on a given night. And we'll get to one of the other ones here in a minute because I think Indiana is certainly coming on lately as well. And they'll play them on Saturday. But, it's pretty important still to finish top 4 in this league, right? Because
you got to get a home series.
yeah, you got to get a home series, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, how things shake out. I mean, so much is going to happen here in the last few weeks, but New York is giving every indication that they're really playing to their potential. They went to Vegas out of the break and handled Vegas. Liberty went and handled Vegas in their home arena. They're clearly got I think, the best team in the league right now. But both Connecticut and Seattle have been kind of up and down. And Indiana is, like you said, on the rise. I think there are some people who probably think they're like maybe the 5th best team in the league at this very moment. I don't think it's out of the question that they would think that they can push their way to a home playoff series. But can you imagine a 4-5 series between the Lynx and the Fever? Think they'd sell a few tickets for that?
I think they would. I don't think they would. I think beyond the tickets, they wouldn't necessarily want that, though, because it does feel like, skipping ahead a little bit, they play Indiana and Caitlin Clark on Saturday, which is also Maya Moore jersey retirement night. Should be plenty of people at Target Center for either one of those would have been a big draw together. It's a pretty big night for them. But that Indiana is becoming basically the team that you wouldn't want to play. It's going to be hard in the playoffs no matter what. And there's teams that have better records than the Lynx right now. But Indiana, Caitlin Clark looks like coming out of the break, she seems like she used that month to her benefit of not playing games, getting a little bit of a break, getting some natural transition to the league to kind of figure out, okay, here's what I'm doing well, here's what I need to work on. And she's such a great player that you give her a little bit of time to figure things out, and she's only going to be that much better.
Yeah, and that's a talented team. I mean, they got last year's Rookie of the Year. They got Mitchell. There's talent on that team, and it seems like they finally, it takes some time, I think, for even great players to acclimate to the league, especially when they're put into such a crucial role. I mean, you mentioned Moore. I mean, Moore was benefited greatly by coming to a team with great veterans where she didn't have to do everything. She just had to do what she did. Moore wasn't the best player on the Lynx team when they won their first title. But they finally kind of gotten together. I think the teammates are kind of figuring out how to handle Clark's passing. And they're pretty formidable right now, I think. Last time year, they handled the Lynx down the stretch.
And that was maybe a little bit of the start of kind of their better play. And now they get him again here, and they play him one more time in Indiana too, right? In September sometime, if I do believe.
This league is so much better than it was top to bottom 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's just so much talent. There's so much watchable talent and so compelling matchups. And I mean, you have Vegas with 4 Olympians. You have New York, which is another super team. You have the Lynx, which is maybe the ultimate team.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on. And it's not just Clark that people are tuning in. This is a good league to watch right now.
It's, when you frame it that way, even obviously knowing how great Nafisa Collier is, I mean, she's one of the 5 best players in the league, at least one of the 10 best players in the league.
Definitely. Well, she's a starter on the Olympic team.
Yes. I mean, she's probably one of the 5 best players in the league. And we know Cheryl Reeves' pedigree. She was the gold medal coach for the Olympic team and, 4-time WNBA champion. McBride's been really good this year.
Probably a leading coach of the year candidate too, when you consider what most people thought this team would be.
Well, and that was my point that I was meandering towards, is that all the other teams that are up there in the standings, you kind of expected to be there, or you can see how they got there. The Lynx are still a surprise to the point where you look at it and you're still not quite sure how they're getting it done, aside from what you just said, that they are very good as a team.
Well, they lead the league in assists per game. They have 4 of the top 7 percentage 3-point shooters in the league. They have one of only 2 players, I believe, averaging 20 and 10. So in many ways, maybe we're underselling them to a certain extent, but it's not like they have 3 or 4 household names on their roster. It's not like they have Jonquil Jones, Miranda Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu, or 4
Right.
Olympians in Vegas, or even, Seattle, which signed Agumake and Skylar Diggins to go with Jewel Lloyd. I mean, they're the outlier in terms of how they're doing it. And I think that in itself is kind of compelling.
Do they, I say worry is the wrong word, or should anybody be concerned? That stat you just mentioned, for the top 7 3-point shooters in the league, some of that can be a little bit regressive at times, or is that just a function of how they're playing and those shots can still keep going in at a high rate?
Well, they were kind of off the charts great 3-point shooting. And then just before Fee got hurt, and then after she got hurt, their shooting really struggled. So there's already kind of been that.
Okay.
But they went 3-2 without Fee because they play defense. And they've won 3 in a row now, regular season games, in and out of the break. They won 2 against Washington without McBride really being very efficient, and she's their best 3-point shooter. So, I mean, on the other side of it is that you would expect that McBride would return to form, and they would have weathered the storm of that spell of relatively cold 3-point shooting, and would be poised to play well down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, who knows? They have 14 games, 9 of them are on the road. There's a lot of games against really good teams. This is going to be a tough finish.
Some of that, like we said, will be this week, the 2 Vegas games and then the Indiana game. Are we done with the Caitlin Clark, Cheryl Reeve Olympics angle, or are we going to have to rehash that again on Saturday?
I kind of think that the not drafting Angel Reese thing has usurped Caitlin Clark as the talking point if you read our newspaper.
It has. I'm just wondering if it seems like anytime there's an opportunity, Cheryl gets asked about it, and she doesn't seem to care to answer the question. And now I just wondered if post Olympics, if that storyline is over, or if we have to have it one more time.
I would hope so.
I would hope so too.
I don't know.
We don't know. How did they? I haven't caught up with them. You obviously have, since they got back from Paris. How did they feel the whole experience went? Are they refreshed? Are they worried about fatigue? Are they just exhilarated and excited and relieved that they didn't, that they won the gold again? How did Collier, Reeve, and the other Olympians return from that?
Well, what is it that Reeve said at the press conference the other day? That after they won the game, she got a message from Steve Kerr welcoming her to the Thank God Club.
That's perfect. That's perfect, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. Expectations were immense, and anything other than a victory would have been unacceptable. And perhaps this final game was closer than anybody wanted it to be, but they got it done. And if you look at Fee, she went from a defense playing kind of role player in their starting lineup, and she's come back here and played very well. She hit 13 of 16 shots and scored 30 points on Saturday. She's one of only 2 players who have scored 30 points while hitting 80% of their shots in a game this year. The other one being McBride, by the way. So I think they've kind of recommitted to her being the focal point of that offense, and because they tend to stray from that a little bit. And Fee is so unselfish that they kind of get away from her being the focal point in this kind of team concept. But I think they're being more intentional about getting her into spots where she can score, and that bodes well down the stretch, I'd say too.
let's take a big picture look at this then. You've already kind of set this up. I mean, this week is tough. 9 of 14 on the road. Like what should a realistic expectation be for how they close this thing out and in the regular season and head towards what, seems like at least a postseason certainty, even if we don't know how that will play out.
Yeah, I think that anything other than a top four finish at this point would be a disappointment.
Just because of where they put themselves at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Saturday will be fun. I mean, you got so many storylines. You got Maya, you got Clark, you got the fact that Clark loved Maya growing up and came up here to watch her. And it's just kind of a neat confluence of things there, I think. I'm looking forward. I haven't talked with Maya since she left.
Yeah.
Been talking to a lot of people this week for a story I'll be doing on her. And this fan base was so lucky to watch that collection of talent. But I don't think there's any question that for all the greatness that the all starting five of that team had, Maya Moore was the generational talent on that team.
Yeah, no, she was. I mean, she was a generational player, and yeah, we don't forget, but just how she left here was just such an unusual and really compelling story ultimately, and she's been back right for the anniversary team, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing, I've been doing this business for decades, and I've covered a lot of things. I covered Randy Moss's rookie year.
Right.
I covered the Packers in 2 Super Bowls for a paper in Wisconsin. And as I've kind of gotten to the end of things here, I've been thinking about like what were the most compelling things that I've been lucky enough to cover. And I have to say that Maya Moore making that 3-pointer in Indiana in 2015 has got to be a top 5 moment. I mean, to me, that kind of exemplifies everything that was great about Moore. Talent, the willingness to accept that position, and the calmness to do it in the way she did it. And they didn't win that series, I don't think, if they didn't win that game.
No.
And,
well, yeah.
I was just, she was a singular talent, and I was lucky to be able to cover her.
If you kind of think about it, we tend to think about it obviously in like terms of the 7 years, right, between 2011 and 2017. But the last kind of 3 years of what you'd consider the dynasty, 15, 16, and 17, the drama in those finals was off the charts. 2016 in the wrong direction.
Moments were hers. I mean, I think of the 3 in Indiana, and I think of Game 5 in 2017 when it looks like the Lynx were about to blow a lead, and came down the lane and hit a runner from the free throw line to basically seal the game. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there are 3 players. I think there are 4 players that played on every title team. And they did it with 3 centers, still being MVP of the last 2 MVPs. But there were 4 players who are on every team, and all their jerseys are already hanging from Target Center. And now it'll be the starting 5. I was talking with Lindsay this week. He's like, that kind of hammers home the fact that what they did and the fact that it's kind of over. I mean, it's a very feeling of finality for some of those players to see that happening on Saturday.
Well, and this year kind of feels like not the first year they've kind of come out from that shadow, but because they've had good years. Obviously, they were in the bubble season. They were very good, but this feels like the first year where they're kind of a true contender post dynasty, if that makes sense. Does that seem fair to you?
Even though she had such a great year last year, I think that this team is built around Collier, who has really truly become a superstar.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing them as players because they're different, but the path that Fee and Maya took are very similar. Same hometown, Same college,
UConn, yeah.
uh, same. Both were first round draft picks of the Lynx. Both have won 2 Olympic gold medals. I mean, it's a very similar path. It's kind of neat. I mean, but Collier has really truly become kind of the centerpiece of a team that has enormous ambitions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the first time, like I said, since the kind of end of whenever you want to define the end of the dynasty, you can kind of see, okay, this is a contender that can compete for, not just nice seasons, playoff berths, but maybe something more than that. And you're right, Saturday should be fun. Caitlin Clark, Maya Moore. Is it, maybe end here. Is it, obviously it was the greatness of Maya Moore, and I'm imagining combined with the proximity of Iowa to here, is that kind of the basis for the Caitlin Clark, Maya Moore kind of connection there?
Well, when Caitlin was here last time, she talked about how Maya was her favorite player anyway, but her dad and she would drive up to games because of the proximity. And there was one game where after the game was over, the Lynx were off, and especially back in those days, after they'd win a game, kids would go on the court and do a little dance with the team after a game. And I think Clark talks about how she went up and hugged Maya and how gracious Maya was, and how it kind of informed her how important it was for great players to kind of foster that younger group. So I think Maya had a fairly significant impact on Clark's view of what playing basketball was. And that only makes this kind of more interesting to me. I don't know. Clark's going to be great. By being an Olympian, might be their best player in 4 years. Who knows? I mean, you think about what the Olympic team might look like in 4 years. You might have both Clark and Paige Buchers on that team. Who knows? It'll be very interesting.
More of this might happen behind the scenes, but do we have a sense for how much those two might interact on Saturday? Have they said anything, or will there be anything where those two are kind of having a moment that people can see?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. I would imagine. It's interesting. Fee was talking yesterday about how they both grew up in the same town. That she remembers meeting Maya when she was in middle school, and Maya was about to go to college. And then they met again when Fee was in high school, and Maya Moore was at UConn. So, she's a fan too.
Yeah.
They have a big picture of Moore hitting that 3-point shot inside the locker room, so everybody sees it when they go in.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what she means to this franchise.
Well, a huge week, capped off probably fittingly by all of the things on Saturday. Kent, appreciate it. Have fun with the whole week, and especially Saturday, and we will talk again soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great perspectives from Kent. Should be a lot of fun on Saturday. Before that, like we said, though, 2 games against Las Vegas. This first one in Vegas tonight, 8:30 p.m. That is an ESPN game, by the way, nationally televised. So all of you out there should be able to check that out. ESPN, 8:30 p.m. Lynx at Aces, a big one. Big home stretch for the Lynx, 14 games. This is one of those 9 road games that will test them as they head towards the finality of this regular season. Let's finish with the cooler quickly. Gophers football bowl projections. Yeah, it's a early time to be talking Gopher football bowl projections, but this did catch my eye. ESPN had 2 of its personalities, writers, these poor souls, pick all 47, whatever it is, 47 bowl games now, counting the college football playoff, stuff like that. Only one of them has the Gophers in a bowl game. 1 out of the 2 picks the Gophers to go to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl in Phoenix. I'm sure our beat writer Randy Johnson wouldn't necessarily mind that one. It is the day after Christmas. So one has Minnesota against Central Florida at the Guaranteed Rate Bowl the day after Christmas. One has the Gophers missing a bowl game entirely. So that is kind of the lay of the land from the ESPN experts, at least going into this season. And that pretty closely aligns with where you might think they are this season, right? Can they win at least 6 or 7 games? I don't know. It's a tough schedule. We don't know much about how well their quarterback's going to play. How well is Max Brosmer going to play? Can he take a step forward, give them that stability for them to be in every game, to execute those critical third downs that you've got to have to win those meaningful toss-up games? We just don't know at this point. So, I mean, bowl projections in August don't mean anything, but they do mean that this is what people think of the Gophers going into the season. And again, we will start to unwrap more of that 8 days from now when they open the year against North Carolina at Huntington Bank Stadium. Until then, until tomorrow, I am Michael Rand. Some good stuff coming up the rest of the week. Josh Minot, Timberwolves player, expected to join me on tomorrow's show. Caught up with him recently at a Timberwolves basketball camp, and hoping to catch up and share the story of something like a cross between the Field of Dreams and the Sandlot. A group of young kids in South Minneapolis who have made a wiffle ball stadium in their backyard. Looks pretty amazing to me. I'm hoping to check in with some of them sometime today and bring you that story on Thursday's podcast as well. So hopefully that'll be all on Thursday's show. Probably some baseball talk on Friday's show as the Twins gear up for a home series. Until then, I am Michael Rand, back at it again tomorrow.